Welcome back to It Came From the Radio. This is Jennifer Lee Feldman. I'm here with Christopher Kaufman. He's an author, composer, presenter, illustrative artist, and performer. He started creating imaginative fantasy books with illustrative art at the age of 9. During high school years, he found music and attended in music composition at Cornell University, where he studied with seasoned and maybe even you call them infamous composers. His stories never left him. He's now completing book 8 of his classical epic fantasy series, Tales of the Ocean City, for which, in addition to the graphically illustrated pages, he creates audio albums filled with music, narration, and sound design, which I love because if you listen to this show at all, I constantly ask people if they have audiobooks that relate to their books so I can listen and really get into it and have the sound effects and the visuals. So here he is with no further ado. Welcome to It Came From the Radio.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So, what gave you the idea you started with music first before the books, it seems like. So, what gave you the idea to add the narration and the music to your books? Most people just put a book out there and it sits on the shelf, and then I harass them about making an audiobook, and then that's it.
Sure.
But you're doing what I've been asking for. So, how did you get there?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it took a long time. So in your intro there, you mentioned, I'd started writing books and fantasy books with illustrations, when I was a kid, like 9. And then I went to, in New Orleans, the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. That's where I started music, in New Orleans, and had these great teachers and got into music. And just, there was my life. So I became a composer and lived the life of a composer. I got my, as you mentioned, my doctorate degrees, advanced degrees in music from Cornell University, where, I studied with Pulitzer Prize-winning composers and all these amazing people, and made permanent friends with musicians, and I continue with that. But by the time I had finished my degrees, I'm the type of person, maybe you are too, I don't know, but I put myself to sleep at night. Everyone has a different routine, but for me, it's an imaginative fantasy scenario of some kind that gets me into it, and then I live it, and then I fall asleep. So I had done that all these years while I was doing my conservatory and music stuff with my stories, Tales of the Ocean City. So I had my music degrees on one hand, and the other, the complete event structure of Tales of the Ocean City in my head. And then to get to your question there, I started writing it down first, and it was good, it was all right, but it really wasn't really happening. It wasn't that feeling that you get. And so then another thing that happened there around that time was I started developing my home laboratory, what you can produce in your studio, and I was doing like independent films and stuff like that, scoring the music, and I put in my 1,000 hours, and I had this whole stuff going, the orchestra and all these sounds and everything going on, and the abilities. And they said, well, why not? And then I started narrating and recording my narration of the stories, Tales of the Ocean City, and composing the music. And so it all happened at once, and then that was it. Like the sound, the experience of saying the words changed how I wrote them, and then I literally found my voice. And with the music, and sometimes the music was first, sometimes the narration and story was first. Even though I knew what was going on in the story, what was going to happen, generally, a lot of things changed and grew as I did it. And the first complete books, the first 2 books, were completely composed this way, with the music and the voice and the story all happening at the same time. Yeah. And that's like 2 hours of full orchestra, like I'm a composer, right? So a doctor, music, symphony. So it's huge, symphonic, strong, really powerful, passionate music that is just a real part of it all. It's all together as one. And by the end of that, I had my my voice and my storytelling was happening, And then I did the physical books, and I did the art, and I worked on, artistic illustrations and illustrative art and programs that helped me do that, using lots of them, blah, blah, blah. And so then the books were there. So then I had the physical books, and then the complete experience theoretically is for, people, well, it is for people to have the book and be reading and listening at the same time, because each page of the books are filled with color, like full page color and illustrative arts and all kind of stuff, so that you can feel it and you see it, and the colors influence your feelings too in the book. So it all works together for a very immersive storytelling, sound world universe that I created just organically by just doing it, and it just happened, and there it is, and then I continued.
Yes, I was listening to something you composed called Music from Earth, and I've actually been told verbatim, you are not of this earth. A few people have said I'm an alien, and that's a whole nother thing. But someone that might not be from Earth, who knows? Maybe none of us are. You created music from Earth. It was very relaxing, and it created a soundscape environment to live in while I was preparing for this interview and showering. And it's some music is maybe it creates a mood more than others. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I thought it just created a nice environment that I really enjoyed. But now, as a creative myself, let's say I'm shooting a movie on Friday, so I'm always working on some type of movie or film every like 2 or 3 days now. That's my life, and we don't know each
Yeah,
other
that's
yet.
great.
So
That's great. Yeah.
now to do that, I'm mostly doing things that I want to do at this point in my life at almost 42, but I spent a lot of time doing things I didn't. But the point is, and my question for you is, in order to do the things I really want to do, like I think my role on Friday is going to be fun and it's cool. There's a lot of things I have to do that I really, really don't want to do. And there's something called Eat the Frog that says, you have to get stuff done. Do the hardest thing when you first wake up, and do the hardest
Yep.
thing first. Eat that frog, get over it, and then you can do the stuff that's interesting. So when it comes to music composing and writing all these books, the Tales of the Ocean City, I mean, you have eight books here. What's maybe something you really don't want to do, but you have to do, and it's part of the process?
Well, to answer that question, what comes to my mind is not anything to do with the creative process of these
Hmm.
projects, but what you have to do in life to keep yourself going. Now, so I have a day job, but I
Hmm.
love it. But it's it's something you have to do that isn't
Hmm.
exactly what you feel like doing at the moment. So, and mine is teaching. I
Oh,
teach
okay.
music. Usually, people who get doctorates in music composition go teach in colleges.
Okay.
But I never felt connected to the academic environment. I found it like when I was trying to connect with it, I started writing my worst music. It got more and more academic and then I stopped and I went my own way and rediscovered myself in
Right.
pieces like you mentioned, music from Earth. I was surprised you found it relaxing because the first movement is called Earth Rhythm, and it's like the depiction of volcanoes in the depths of the ocean, all this violent, wild, ecstatic, powerful music. Now in the middle, maybe you got to the middle part that's peaceful, but
Yeah, there was
anyway,
some part that was really nice. I enjoyed it, whatever it is.
sure, sure. Anyway, so you know, there it is.
So teaching. So yeah, a lot of times when you try to fit into someone else's mold, even for this radio show, I was thinking that. I was like, I've kind of been doing what Mark, the main host, kind of told me to do and wants to do for 5 years. And I was like, I'm not going to disrespect him in any way, but my style is vastly different than probably 95% of the interviews I've done for the show. Because when you're fitting into a school, or if you're hosting for a company, I've shot commercials for Optimum and Project Runway and different companies. That vibe is going to be very different when you're working for someone else than when you're creating for yourself, which might be completely the opposite of what you're doing. So I can understand that whole teaching, putting you in a box and maybe making you do things that aren't exactly your instincts. Whereas hopefully when you're creating your own work, you can be the locus of control and do things that feel right for you. Do you
Mm-hmm.
do that?
Of course, yes. That is the way
Okay.
it is. You are your own boss in every way. I
Hmm.
also put on concerts. So,
Hmm.
as a concert presenter, boy, that has a lot of work in it. That isn't necessarily your first joy, which is,
Hmm.
developing advertisements and audience
Yeah.
and asking people to come and getting them to come and all that kind of thing to come to the concert. You know, luckily, one of my concerts is called the Fantastic Theater, and it is once a year, the Sunday before Halloween in a theater, a beautiful theatrical environment, and it's like about you know presenting new music and art to people of all ages all at once. And it used to have a really strong Halloween theme, which is why it's around there.
Yeah.
And for that one, I solved the problem because I became friends with the guy who directs the Mark Twain Middle School Band. It's a really high level band, and my daughter
Hmm.
was in the band. That's how I met the guy. She went
Oh,
to the
cool.
the school, middle school there, and so now I have the entire band come for my show, and they sit on stage throughout, like on a corner of the stage, for the entire show, and all of their parents and guardians are required to be there, and
Oh
then
my
the
God.
school gives me a big check to pay for all of their, tickets, and then I add other people, but I have like standing room only every year at minimal
Wow.
effort, so I am so happy about that.
That's very cool. And that actually ties back to one of my brands called So Hot. It's a fashion brand, and it's all about making children do child labor for low wages.
Oh, great!
So,
Yeah, that's a good
so
one.
that's kind of what you're doing. You understand, put kids to work, or put, as I'm not going to mention his name. There's a comedy booker that refers to the people that are part of the show and watch the show as suckers. He's got to get suckers to come to the show, and and children. Anyway, child labor. I'm a big fan of it.
Okay, yeah,
That's probably the only reason I would have children is to put them to work for me. But I'm not going to do that. The cost benefit ratio is just really not adding up. Now, you have to put in a lot of work to just for the events. I did comedy events and live
yeah,
shows and film
yeah.
festival shows, and just putting together one show for a film festival took me like 8 weeks. It took over my life. It took over everything. It was very exhausting. I did it for 3 years in a row. And honestly, for the last 2 years, I really enjoyed more making radio, movies, commercials, and
Yeah.
forgetting these live events that are soul sucking. So, how do you like what things do you have to cut out of your life or sacrifice to make time for all this productivity? I'm sure, people say, oh, you can do anything. No, you use 24 hours in a day and you have to neglect certain things if you're going to do other things. So, like, are there part of your life that you have to neglect to get all this stuff done?
Well, maybe in the past, but I've really got it all organized at this point where
Yeah,
I can
nice.
just be there all day, be in that world. And but similar to your solution to things, I'm
Hmm.
going to be, I think next week, I hope, starting my own podcast where I will eventually include all my work. But starting it, it's going to be
Hmm.
a new episode of Tales of the Ocean City each week. It was originally conceived as episodes. So
Okay.
each podcast will have a 10-minute episode up front of Tales of the Ocean City, ongoing fantasy adventure with music and everything. And then the second half will be a variety of things, uh, interviews, poetic readings, blog entries that I turn into things I read and have music along with it, and all kinds of things like that. Talk about fantasy authors like
Hmm.
Lloyd Alexander, Lord Dunsany, and stuff like that. And interviewing, I have a fun way of doing interviews, which is called the Phantasmagoria Club with Professor Calabash, and he interviews mythological figures and characters from my books. So you get to know the books better and the characters and get in depth with them through this fun device that I include. So that will be starting up soon, and it gets to, then I'll be able to say, another thing that I do that I wish to introduce you to are my environmental pieces. And here's an excerpt or a bit from Music from Earth. And then if you wish to explore further, you can go to my website and see all about that. So eventually I'll be able to tie together, all the different things I do into that one place. And that's so much fun because I just create the episodes here in my studio, where I love to work, my laboratory, and get everything going all put together. And so that's what I'm doing. It's kind of similar to what you're saying, how you wrapped things into a bubble that isn't constant out, extroverted, getting people together to come to festivals. So you can focus on your work, on yourself.
Yeah, having that home studio is really important. I had someone that wants me to start a podcast with him, which I've already done. I'm never partnering. It's all about features, but I'm never going to partner. I'm a lone wolf. That's it. I got my studio here. 2018,
There
bought
you
this
go.
house, built wardrobe closets, have tons of props, have so much stuff that to fill up a car. It would take like 9 cars to bring this to Brooklyn, come to this, we'll come to this studio. No, I have everything here because you have to have your process in your production studio. And some people don't understand that. So I'm like, I'm not traveling. If you want to come to me, maybe I'll feature you. But like, no,
Sure.
you can't. You can't bring musical equipment and lighting and props and special effects. So the process.
It's
I
exhausting.
have the process before I do everything. Before the show, I take a bunch of drugs. Nah, I take a bunch of legal drugs like coffee. Today there's something called citicoline, helps your brain a little bit. It's
Whoa.
legal. It wakes you up. Wheatgrass, I have out my door. I didn't have wheatgrass. I'm really upset about that. But
Ah,
wheatgrass, for anyone listening, it actually can wake your brain up so much that if you're on MAOIs, which I'm not, but some people take MAOIs and depressive drugs and
hmm.
things like that, it can make you manic. So your process, are there any processes you do before composing music or writing a book?
Well, I always want to get in shape, but basically,
Mhm.
I do like cold brew
Okay.
coffee, where it's real simple to make, and I down some of that and get to work. It's just a constant process. I mean, one thing I love that's new to me, even though it's been around for a while now, is the cloud. So I can sit in my car and I'm waiting, for my daughter to get
Hmm.
in so we can drive somewhere, whatever it is. And I can pull out my phone and write. Just
Huh.
write. And then I go home and it's on my computer, and
Yes.
vice versa. So anywhere you are, I can, I just tell myself, okay, just do one word, just change one word, just do one paragraph. And then I end up working, and then she says, Dad, it's time to go. you know? So
Right, right.
it's a constant thing like that. So it's just, who I am, who you are, and you're just doing
Mm.
it kind of all the time
Yeah.
without thinking about it, just doing it.
Hmm.
It's just after a while, that's just who you are. Your music comes to you, you write, you do it. It's more like you don't have to wait for anything. You don't have to wait for inspiration or anything like that. You just do it. You just do it, do it, and it's a
Yeah.
constant flow.
Yes, yes. A lot of the things I did when I was like 2, 3, 4, I'm doing now professionally, getting paid for it, like writing jingles or doing funny dances. And I used to do entertain my dad's friends and just, come in and have all these like fake commercials, and now I'm making commercials. Anyway,
Great. No, that's
yeah,
it.
that my final thought for this, because we're at the end of the interview, which I've given this advice, I'm only almost 42, so I've held back on giving advice. I used to give health seminars and be a fitness teacher. But I'm like, you know what? Let's do more in life before we give advice. But I'm going to give one piece of advice that's worked for me, and it's obviously worked for you. Use the cloud for writing. And I had someone call me crumpled paper girl like 10, 11 years ago because I'd always walk around. I had all these notes. I'd write down notes everywhere. And then transcribing the paper to the computer, that would get crazy. So now on my phone, I highly recommend this for anyone writing a song, stand up, music, movies, a 50 Cent tell all documentary about Diddy, whatever you're creating. Get Microsoft OneDrive or, some type of note-taking file that can go from your computer. to your phone, to your pad, to your car, everywhere. And obviously, you don't want to put anything explicit or incriminating because that will end up everywhere and people will see it. So that's a little downside to this, but there's no excuses. You got an idea, you got a quote, you got a movie idea, get your phone out. You can do it. I do it at a light. I'm not recommending people to text and drive or text while you're at a very long light. There are 5-minute lights out there, but yeah, get everything on your written down in these files. And if you're not doing it, I think you're going to fail at life. So that's my mandatory rule for everyone I want to work with. And I tried to get this done with one producing partner and he never did it. And that's one of many reasons why I'll never work with him because he doesn't write notes. So that's my very long final thought. Please give
That's a
us your
great one.
final thought and where to find you.
Well, my books and stuff are all at talesoftheoceancity.com. That's easy to remember. talesoftheoceancity.com. And my main website for my work, if you want to just see a bit of everything, is Sound Artists. That's Sound Art Us, US. Sound Artus. As kind of my interface from my creative world into the world. And so that's my home website, which has a lot of things in it. My pages are designed so you can scroll and get a lot in 30 seconds, but then you can dive in and delve and for as long as you want. And then I have a YouTube channel called Sound Artists on YouTube. And the playlists, and you can see the classical pieces, the environmental pieces, the stuff you're talking about, music from Earth and Hudson Valley music, and many of those, which are some of my most performed pieces. And then Tales of the Ocean City and audiobooks and all that kind of thing. And the Fantastic Theater, I have beautiful, 15-minute highlights films from my concerts, and you can see the whole thing right there, and they're fun to watch. So there you go. That's how you find me.
And what state, city, where are these concerts for people that want to go in person?
Downtown Brooklyn.
Downtown Brooklyn. All right. That's the end of the interview. We're way over time. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and also sharing your work with me. I found you very inspiring
Thank you.
while I was taking a shower and getting ready. Yeah, sorry. So I do a lot of preparing in the shower and texting in the shower.
It has good
All right.
acoustics.
That's a very weird final thought. That's what happens when I don't script the interview out. Thank you so much again. And now
All the
back to the
best.
studio for more. It came from the radio.
Thank you so much.